Imagine watching the most wholesome friendship in Westeros history, rooting for the good guys to finally win, seeing honor and loyalty triumph over corruption and cruelty, and then having George R. R. Martin remind you that this is his world and happy endings are for fairy tales that don't involve dragons. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is heading toward a catastrophe so devastating that it makes the Red Wedding look like a minor inconvenience. And every heartwarming moment we're getting now is just making the inevitable destruction so much worse. If you're ready to have your heart systematically destroyed by a genius who treats character happiness like a suggestion he actively ignores, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because Westeros Throne is about to explain why this story can only end in flames, literally. Let's establish something right off the bat. This isn't pessimism. This isn't being edgy. This is understanding how George R. R. Martin operates. The man doesn't write stories where the good guys ride off into the sunset. He writes stories where the good guys get brutally reminded that goodness is a liability in a world built on treachery. And Dunk and Egg? They're the goodest guys in the entire franchise, which means they're basically wearing targets that say, please destroy everything we love. Here's what we know about where this story ends: the tragedy at Summerhal. If those words don't mean anything to you yet, buckle up, because we're talking about one of the most catastrophic disasters in Targaryen history. Summerhal is where Egg, now King Aegon V, dies trying to hatch dragon eggs. The entire palace goes up in flames. People die screaming. Dreams turn to ash. And Duncan the Tall, the 7-foot giant who spent decades protecting Egg, dies trying to save him. They both burn, and everything they built burns with them. But it gets so much worse than just the ending, because Martin's genius isn't in the destination. It's in making the journey so beautiful that the destination breaks you. Every adventure Dunk and Egg have, every person they help, every injustice they fight, every moment of genuine friendship and loyalty they share, it's all building toward a fire that consumes everything. It's like watching someone construct an elaborate sandcastle knowing the tide is coming, except the tide is literal dragon fire, and the sandcastle is made of people you love. Think about what makes Dunk and Egg's relationship so special. You've got a low-born hedge knight who has no business being friends with a prince, paired with a royal who has no business caring about common people. They transcend class barriers. They genuinely care about each other without ulterior motives. Dunk protects Egg not because he has to, but because he wants to. Egg respects Dunk, not despite his common birth, but because Dunk represents everything a true knight should be. This is the purest relationship in all of Westeros, which in Martin's world means it's doomed harder than a Stark at a wedding. Now let's talk about Egg's character arc, because it's simultaneously inspiring and heartbreaking. This kid grows up seeing how broken the Seven Kingdoms are. He watches corrupt lords abuse their power. He sees small folks suffering under unjust taxation and cruel laws. He witnesses firsthand how the nobility has failed the realm. So what does he do when he becomes king? He tries to fix everything. He attempts genuine reform. He fights for the common people. And the nobility fights back at every single turn, because the system doesn't want to be fixed. Egg spends decades trying to make Westeros better. And what does he get for it? Resistance, rebellion, and the constant reminder that being a good king isn't enough when you're surrounded by lords who prefer the status quo. So eventually, Egg starts looking backward instead of forward. He becomes obsessed with dragons, with restoring the power that made House Targaryen great, with finding a way to force the realm to accept his reforms. And that obsession leads him straight to Summerhal and the fire that kills him. Here's the truly devastating part. Egg doesn't fail because he's incompetent or evil. He fails because he cares too much. His tragedy is that he spent his entire childhood learning how to be a good ruler, and then spent his entire reign discovering that being good isn't enough. The realm doesn't want a good king. It wants a strong king, a terrifying king, a king who rules through power rather than justice. And Egg refuses to be that kind of king, so he searches for another way. Dragons. Always dragons. The Targaryen solution to every problem, except this time the dragons are still eggs, and the fire meant to hatch them just burns everything instead. Duncan's fate is somehow even worse. Imagine dedicating your entire life to protecting someone. You're there for every adventure, every danger, every close call. You teach them honor and courage. You stand between them and death countless times. You watch them grow from a boy into a king. And then, at the moment that matters most, you can't save them. You die trying, which is probably exactly how Dunk would want to go, but you still fail. The one job you had, the one person you swore to protect, burns to death while you burn trying to reach them. The thematic weight of this tragedy is crushing. Dunk and Egg represent the idea that honor and goodness can change the world. They're proof that true knights and just kings can make a difference. Except they don't make a lasting difference. Egg's reforms largely die with him. The nobility reasserts control. The realm goes back to being the corrupt, unjust mess it always was. And a few generations later, we get the Mad King, and the Targaryen dynasty ends in fire and blood, just like it began. Everything Dunk and Egg fought for, everything they believed in, it all amounts to a brief moment of light before the darkness returns. But wait, there's more tragedy to unpack. The dragon eggs that Egg tries to hatch at Summerhal might be the same ones, or related to the ones, that eventually end up with Daenerys. So Egg's failed attempt to restore dragons inadvertently sets in motion the events that lead to actual dragons returning to the world, but he never knows it. He dies thinking he failed completely, never realizing that his obsession might have planted the seeds for the dragon's true return decades later. That's the kind of cruel irony Martin specializes in. The tragedy extends beyond just Dunk and Egg too. Everyone at Summerhal dies or suffers. The Targaryen family loses multiple members. Duncan's possible descendants lose their ancestor. The realm loses a good king trying desperately to be better. And for what? For dragon eggs that don't hatch. For a dream that becomes a nightmare. For the perpetual Targaryen delusion that fire can solve problems instead of just creating new ones. What makes this ending so perfect in its awfulness is that it's completely avoidable and completely inevitable at the same time. Egg doesn't have to try hatching dragons. He could accept that dragons are gone and focus on ruling without them. But if he did that, he wouldn't be Egg. His entire character is built on refusing to accept things as they are and fighting to make them better. So his tragedy is that his greatest strength, his unwillingness to give up, becomes his fatal flaw. The same goes for Dunk. He doesn't hangs for watching Westeros throne. And remember, in George R.R. Martin's world, the more you love something, the more it's going to hurt when he takes it away.